Hello, my name is Verrick Faust, and this is the first episode of my STEM journey to working in a professional dream job. So I wanted to create a bit of a little series here, a few couple mini episodes here and there, so then we can go through and just going through what steps I did through my schools, different time periods through school, like middle school, high school, college, and then when I eventually got a professional job and what I did to navigate through those different time periods. So what I wanted to do was go through these things and kind of put it in a bit of a way on YouTube and on other platforms so that people could watch these and have the ability to get an idea of what they want to do and use this to help determine what they want to do in school and maybe help give them some guidance. That's really the main focus, is to help give people guidance. I'm going to be starting off with what I started in middle school and how I moved through middle school. Um, of course, anyone in middle school, high school, college, even in your current profession, if you have kids, I would highly recommend watching these videos. I hope to help give you tons of information, guidance, tips to help your kids or students that are watching, to help guide them through these very difficult questions that, as a student, I ran into all the time. I get a lot of questions similar to these, as like what I want to be when I grow up, how do I navigate those questions, and what do I do to help my students do it? Like, a lot of teachers ask me that question a lot too. So I hope that people get a lot of good information. Please feel free to contact me, ask me any additional follow-ups if I'm not able to touch on them during this video. But yeah, I'll move right into it. So that's mostly the reason why I'm doing this. So I wanted to start through by going through what I did in middle school. So in middle school, it's kind of where it was the tipping point when I decided this is what I want to do. And it wasn't like I knew right away. I think it's hard to really know what you want to do off the bat. In elementary, I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian. Then I thought maybe engineering, and then I was like, oh no, I want to do writing, and it really was difficult. I didn't really know what I wanted to do because there's so many options. I really admire the police officers. I think what they do is very difficult. And I wanted to do what I could to make the world a better place. That's something near and dear to my heart, is helping people. So I wanted to do something like that. Then I thought maybe a doctor, because they do that all the time. So there's so many different options. When I was in middle school, they gave out these tests. They're called kind of like personality tests or personality assessments. So when I was in middle school, they gave these tests out, and during class time, we were asked to take these tests. They would ask basic questions of, do you like math, science? Like, out of these, how would you rank them? Which one's your favorite? If you had your choice of doing this activity or this activity, which one would you choose? Like playing video games or building Legos. These very basic things that, as a student, I didn't really think much of it. I was like, oh yeah, I mean, I like both Legos and video games. It's kind of hard. I was more of a Legos kid at the time, so I was definitely more heavily towards Legos because I have epilepsy, so I wasn't able to play video games that often. Still, I'm not. So I would lean towards those type of questions. These types of questions just were designed to help me figure out what I apparently wanted to be when I grow up. And that's what happened. At the end of the assessment, it would say, okay, here's the category of what you followed under. We found that you were more of what they assessed as a STEM kid, specifically like engineering, nursing, which made sense. I was a big math and science guy. I liked math and science. I did a lot of math. I was excelling in science. And I liked helping people too. But they never asked that question, I found, which was ironic. But I took a couple of these assessment tests. I took one at school. I took one at home. My parents asked me to do one again, just for a fun exercise. Both of my parents were teachers, so I guess that's probably why they had me do one. And it came up similar both ways. It was like mechanical engineering. I did get one computer science, and then like nursing. Nursing was one that came up once. Veterinarian came up, and then accounting. accounting came up, I did talk to a few people in these positions, because that's what I would recommend as a first thing to do. Um, so this would be like a good note for people. If you are in these types of fields in middle school, if you're looking into these things, you need to talk to people in these fields. If you are interested in any of the fields that I notated or any other field, I would highly recommend your first thing to do would be to, after you figure out what you want to do, is to reach out to these people. So I reached out to people that were in engineering. Fortunately, I actually have a lot of engineers in my family. My uncles on both sides of my family are engineers, so I was able to contact them, get a little bit more information. Obviously, I was a middle schooler, so I didn't understand everything they were saying to me, but they did give me a general idea of what their day to day was. They're like, "Oh yeah, I go to work." One of them works on airplanes a lot, so he's like, "I go on an airplane. Sometimes I go out of the country." He's been to Germany, Russia, um, several different places, England. I asked him if he gets to go around those areas. He says he doesn't because of work. But he gets to go around all these places because he's there to assess the airplanes and work on them. And he wasn't a mechanical engineer, but he did do engineering type work. And the way that he explained it to me at the time was that he specifically said that a lot of the engineerings in that area, if you're a mechanical engineer, you do a lot of similar type of engineering as others. There are some that are a little bit different. If you go like bioengineering, that's a lot more different than mechanical engineering. But the same concept is applied here. So if that's the thing you're doing, computer engineer is a little bit different as well. But that was the general understanding that I got when I was talking to him. I did talk to my other uncle who taught at UW Platteville. He was an instructor there. He worked with a lot of students. They did a lot of 3D printing. He was a coach on the robotics team they had there. They had an FRC team, a first robotics team, which was really cool. And this was actually my first time I actually got to talk to and meet the robotics team. It's my first interaction with them at the time. And it was really neat because I was able to ask all these kids who were in college and get their point of view on these types of questions, because they were all going there for engineering type positions as well. Most of them were going for mechanic. I don't remember all of them specifically, but the bulk of them were either mechanic or robotic when I was talking to them, because they were all on the robotics team. So I was very enamored by it because I enjoy 3D printing. I was doing a little bit of it with my uncle at the time. He let me borrow a 3D printer of his that he had available for me. It was something that was no longer being produced. It was on a recall. It wasn't really worth much, I guess, is what he said. And he just said I could play with it for the time being because it wasn't something that he really enjoyed using. It was a networked printer as well, so it was a little bit more funky. So I was very, very happy and fortunate to have that opportunity. So I'd start looking into 3D printing, how that kind of interacted using slicers and all that type of utility with the 3D printer. And I thought I would use that to kind of give myself an edge, because that's something I would definitely recommend if you're looking into going into these type of positions. I would recommend going into trying to give yourself a bit of a head start, is what I would say. So I wanted to make sure I had a head start in an engineering field, and these were the ways that I thought was great. Giving myself a CAD understanding. I used ShapeUp. It was a very I'm sorry, SketchUp. My bad. SketchUp. It is what it was called. Not ShapeUp. That one I don't think I've ever used, but SketchUp is what it was called because there was a free version of it that he directed me towards, and he said just watch some YouTube videos on it. You'll get an understanding, and then you can start building stuff. Because I've never used a CAD program. We weren't really taught that in middle school when I was in middle school. So I was just going on a computer, learning basic CAD stuff at middle school level. But I was very enamored by computers as well, because computer science was one of the ones on there when I got one of the tests. And I do like computers. I think they're very interesting. They were kind of a new thing in our school district. We didn't get to use them all the time, but I found them very cool. One of the most interesting things when I first interacted with a computer would have been the Surfaces. We had like Surface Pros in our school district for a time period. They were terrible. It was like the first generation of Surface Pros, but it was just the idea that, oh, it's a tablet, and then it's not, it can be a laptop at the same time. I mean, that just blew my mind. So like those things made me so excited, and I wanted to learn more about how could you do that. Like to me it was like, oh, there's no way you could do a tablet that's also a computer. Like that never came to my mind, but it did happen, and I was just so enamored by it, and so it inspired me to look into more of a computer science as well. So I kind of did two things at the same time. That's mostly because I didn't understand what I wanted to do when I grew up. As a middle schooler, I thought, all right, I'll do uh, CAD work right now, and then I'll do computer science right now. I kind of did two things at once. Not always the best idea, but if you aren't sure, I mean that's still a great option, because then that gives you a bit of a uh, puts you in a good position when you get into high school. If you still aren't sure yet, you can kind of figure it out more. And some things I wanted to note is that I did do a couple of job shadows. My uncle took me to his college. He showed me around, showed me what they did there, what his day to day was like. He taught students for the most part, so it was more of an instructor job. But he showed me what his curriculum looked like, I guess is what I should say. My other uncle who worked on the airplanes, he lived in Minnesota, so unfortunately I wasn't able to get a job shadow there, just due to logistics of a 4-hour drive there and a 4-hour drive back. That's already 8 hours, not including the possible job there. Unfortunately, I didn't have any other engineering friends here at the time. My grandfather, he did a lot of John Deere work when he was at John Deere. John Deere did have a nice little thing where you could go in and they would just show you around. So I did do something like that as a middle schooler. So that would probably be the closest thing to, like, other than the Platteville one that I did engineering wise. In terms of computer science, I wasn't able to get a really good computer science understanding of like how things in computer science work. So what I decided to do instead was just really watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos of people who are doing these types of jobs. So that'd be like Steve Jobs, um, people that aren't really well mentioned. Linus Sebastian, he actually is a great YouTuber who does a whole bunch of things in this field. I followed him a lot when I was in middle school because I found what he was talking about very interesting. He goes over into a more basic sense of what technology is, and then he would explain to it. He doesn't go into a deep sense, but he has been in the industry for a while, so I had a high amount of trust into what he was saying, and he gave a lot of good examples. So that's what I would do. I would just go through and check through on YouTube, and then when I felt like I had a good enough understanding, I would start testing things. I would go into like command line on our family computer, and I would go through and just test out a couple commands that I would learn from online. A couple chat groups had, or a couple websites had a couple little things for you to learn. It was like, here, try this and see what happens. If it happened properly, you were good. If not, go back and retry it again. Create bat files in command line. Just doing some very basic work, just so you can get a good idea of how Microsoft works and everything like that. It was kind of giving me that basic coding understanding. I didn't really know much about coding at the time. We didn't have any coding classes when I was in middle school. We had a little bit of Scratch in one of my classes for like 2 classes, and then that was it. Like it was like a 1 or 2 class periods of, here's a little bit of coding, we're moving on to the next thing, and that was it. So I was interested, and I just didn't get to look into it that much. And then I was interested enough during the summer to then go into the command line, learn a little bit more, do the .bat files, and then that's when I really got engrossed by it. I was like, oh, this is so cool. I can create a .bat file that lets me click on it, and it does all these actions in order. And just the whole concept of that, I didn't know. So I was like, oh, let's look into why it's doing it. So then I would go through, go on websites, go on videos, and say, why is it working this way? So I'd spend time on doing all of these things. And my parents were wondering, what are you doing? Why are you looking to this? Because my parents, one of them's a history teacher, the other one was a special ed teacher. They don't teach anything in computer science, and their degrees don't really cover anything on that. And I would show them what I did, and they would be completely blown away. They're like, well, how did you do that? And I was like, oh, I built it this way. I learned it online. And I show them where I learned it at, because I do want to preface that I don't want kids going online just randomly looking up stuff. I don't want to encourage anything like that necessarily. So please, vet through all that type of information. But I do recommend that you explore these types of questions, because It's very important that you do that. These things are really useful. After I went into command line, I went into PowerShell. PowerShell is another good part of Microsoft. These are all basic uh, components of a Windows operating system, and have been very beneficial to me when I was working through school. So I would highly recommend people doing these types of things. And this is a really big reason why. After I did that, I learned even a little bit of C++ because I was just interested in coding. I didn't really know much about coding. Our school didn't teach anything really on it. So because of that, I wanted to learn more about it. I was intrigued by it from some of the videos that people talked about. I looked into Linux because there was a lot of coding in Linux at the time. Linux was kind of a lot of code needed because it just didn't run so well at that time. So I just looked into that a lot more because it was using things like Wine. Again, most of my family members had no idea what any of this was, so I was just very intrigued by it. I mean, it's something that nobody around you knew, but you were able to know. And I, as a kid, that was awesome. Like you had something that nobody else knew about. Like it was a secret. And in this day of age, having secrets or things that people don't know is it's almost magic. That was the thing. So I would bring it to school. I would show them, hey, this is what I found. I'd be able to run these bat files and stuff, which did lead into a couple other things that I had to show teachers of, like, I can do this. I don't know if I'm supposed to be able to do this, which I did go through and I did show teachers, and I do know that they did correct these issues previously because our school district didn't want bat files to be run on their computers, so I did stop doing that. But it was that whole, like, I was interested by it. And then I did ask another engineer, and I asked if they used, do you use bat files? Do you use these? And I was asking all these questions, and then they did say, you ask a lot of great questions, but these aren't things that we typically use or do. And it was at that point that I was like, I might be going down the wrong rabbit hole. And this would be like one of the points I would recommend, just noting that just because, you're going through all these things, you have to remember, I went through without any guidance. I was just a kid interested or going through the rabbit hole, going deeper and deeper, trying to find out more and more information. But because I haven't aimed anywhere, I didn't know what I was doing. So because of that, he pointed out I would probably look into this, and this. So he pointed out, like, other types of CAD programs. He pointed out 3D printing models and why does it work this way? Why is there some imperfections here? And then the math and the science behind it. And so then I started looking into that as well. And I put a little bit more attention on that and a little less on the other stuff I was doing. And that's really, I think, the bigger point. It is just going through and checking those types of resources. One of the biggest things is checking with your the people around you, the people in your community. A lot of times we were able to, when I was around 8th grade, we were able to get actual, like, people in engineering, people that were doctors, that were nurses, that were computer science people. We had one computer science person. I told them all this, and they're like, "Oh, that's really cool. You're doing something similar to programming. You're learning those techniques. You're doing that." He was telling me that I was on a similar right path, and that's when he told me about the C++. He was like, "Yeah, look deeper into C++. That'll give you more information on what you're looking for." And that's why I did start looking more into the C++ coding language and just try and get a more understanding of how that worked, because he said that the other things I were doing gave me the basics of what I needed, but C++ is where the industry kind of uses, like C++, C#, all these other ones that he listed out a longer list than I am currently, but that's just because as a kid I didn't really understand a lot of these. He would say he probably listed out Java, I'm assuming, and probably Perl, and like a whole bunch of other bigger ones that I was like, as a kid, was like, I don't know those. But all these different options, and then the engineering teacher would give me the same ones that I was looking at the time. From a 3D printing and robotics and those types of things. So those are the things I would recommend doing. As a student, you also have a couple of resources available to you, and that's another thing I wanted to point out. These things that our school was able to provide us was really great, and some schools don't have these available to them, and I understand that. And that's why, going like I did go through and check all these things because I didn't have coding available to me. So coding.org is a great resource to go through. If you're at a school that doesn't have a resource, I went to coding.org and I was able to learn a lot more about C++. They gave you a couple other options as well, and they kind of have block and scratch coding. And they show you what's actually happening beneath the block, which is nice. I I would highly recommend it. But honestly, the most useful thing is when you reach out to people in the community that do these jobs on a day-to-day basis. That's really the best part about middle school is if you can do that in middle school, you'll be so much better set up for high school. And that's really what I would recommend. If you can set it up where you are ready for, you know what you want to do, or you have like one or two things that you're pretty interested in, and they're in the similar scheme, like engineering and computers. There's a in a similar schema, like it's science and math, somewhere in that vicinity, and you know what you'll have to do in high school to get there. That'll make it easier for you in high school to translate those classes, and that's really what I wanted to suggest for this section of the episode. Is that make sure you can narrow down what you want to do in middle school, or whatever school you're in currently. Focus your attention on those one or two things, and then push forward on learning beyond just school. One of the things that a lot of students I think run into the issue of is that they go to school, they learn, and then they go home and they don't believe that's where learning should happen. And to some degree, I understand that. When I was a kid, I did all my homework at school, and it was very funny because a lot of the times my parents would tell me, "Verrick, it's homework. It's supposed to be done at home." And as a kid, I would often tell them, "Yeah, but I had time to do it at school. Why wouldn't I just do it at school? It's time efficiency." But you know, I then kind of took it from a different perspective of let me get the homework out of the way so then I can do additional work at home. And I think they took that a little bit better. They saw it as okay, he's doing his homework, which is what he needs to do to get good grades and that type of thing. But then he's taking it a step further by trying to further himself in an educated standpoint or helping himself further down the line. And I think that's something that, from a parent perspective, is very important. I do want to state that my parents were supportive of what I did. They didn't really know that I was going through, like, I spent hours upon hours doing this every day, during the weekend, during the summer. Just because I was so fascinated by it. My sisters never really understood why I was doing these things, and it was really funny actually. I don't. They always would ask, "Why are you doing these types of things?" And I told them it was just so interesting. I would show it to them, and they would say it's cool, and they would have no idea what's going on, and those types of things I just found to be so interesting. I think your kids could be in that same boat, where they would be really interested to go deeper into these types of concepts. And as a parent, you would have you might be in that position where you don't know what's going on, but you definitely have the ability to help your kid or student, if you're a teacher, further themselves in those areas. And if you have a parent, or I'm sorry, if you have a student or a kid who's in that area where they want to further themselves, I definitely recommend just going forward with it. If you don't know what to do, ask somebody. I bet there's somebody at the school that knows what they need in order to further themselves in that line. Or if they don't, um, honestly, the internet does have a lot of good information on there. So maybe just track that, look in to see what they have available to you. The coding.org website has a lot of good information. I would be happy to reach out to you guys and let you know what good options you have, depending on the age of your student and what they're looking for those types of classes. Or normally a supervisor or a counselor will have those type of classes or information. And then I did want to also add on that a lot of places nowadays have summer activities. I know where I work at. I work at a college currently in ICC, and they have a great thing for summer break. A lot of kids can go through and do a whole bunch of STEM activities, and learn all these amazing things that I wish I knew of. Because they've done it, I think, for 10 years now, roughly, and it's just so amazing. And I wish I was able to take part of it. I just didn't know it existed, honestly. But they talk about 3D printing, they do animals, they do a whole array of different things, and it seems like a real joy. So just trying to get out there and get a better understanding of these things. I know libraries do a great job of these types of furthering education for kids during the summer. So just doing those types of things really will help both your kid and or students in these aspects. And that's really what I would suggest. In terms, if you have anyone struggling with this, or if you're in an area where there isn't enough options, I totally understand that, and that's why I wanted to also make sure those resources were available to you. My opinion is that everyone should have a resource available to them to work in the direction they want to. So that is one thing I really am strongly for, and I'd be happy to work for anyone who needs to get in that direction or needs anyone to talk to them. I work with a lot of teachers who ask me, hey, can you talk to my kid or talk to these students about what direction they need to go and why, and I'd be happy to do that. The reason why I'm creating this video is just in case I'm unable to reach everybody. But yeah, so this is probably going to conclude this video. I do want to make sure that I separate the videos just to make it a little bit more easier for people to digest. But definitely let me know if you have any questions, and I'd be happy to reach out to people if there's any follow-ups you have, or if you have any other additional questions on this particular video. Thank you so much, guys, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.